Thanks, G. I think, thanks. Yeah? Signing me up that way at the Android meetup. Yeah, as G said, my history actually technically is in iOS, not Android, but I'm a passionate lover these days of the Android ecosystem and all things Android. My history actually in mobile goes back all the way to 2007, launch of iOS, and I was one of the original members of the Cocoa Heads group here in Sydney when only 3 of us used to turn up, and we'd turn up and go, oh, hang on, we worked on the talk together today, and then we ran it by you. So we've all actually said, fuck it, let's just go to the pub. And we actually just used to end up at the pub every month and never see or do any talks. And now, obviously, it's an ecosystem, the same size as this, and it's flourishing, and it's great, and it's wonderful. And I think that's really a sign that, mobile's really hit its stride, and it's really hit its maturity, and it's really hit its legs. And I think that's really awesome. What I want to talk to you guys and girls about tonight, though, is not just mobile. I want to talk to you guys more about this idea of design and designing what I like to call for an unknown future. This thing that's coming, this stuff that's coming down the line, all this interesting, amazing, and emerging technologies on their way down, and we need to start thinking about this stuff. I feel that it's our responsibility to start thinking about this stuff and to start designing for it. And design, I want to clarify the use of the word design. Design's not about pretty pixels. A lot of people think design is just about designing and pixels, et cetera, et cetera. Design isn't that at all. Design's about having an intent, doing things with an intent. So we should be designing product. We should be designing experiences. We should be designing systems. We should be designing technology. We should be designing architecture, as well as brands and marketing, all of those things. So design really for me is about having an intent and designing that intent and deciding where we're going and why we're going there. So how do we design when we don't know what we're designing for? We're designing for some unknown future, some things that are coming. And let's be honest, we can't actually know the future. So the first thing that a lot of, when we're talking with businesses and I start talking about this stuff, is they go, well, Cam, what does the future look like? And I say, well, unless you're Biff Tannen in the second Back to the Future, you really don't know what the future looks like. And if you did, then you'd probably be Biff Tannen, and that guy wasn't exactly awesome. So, but what we can do, and what I want to talk to all of you guys and girls about, is we can be designing systems that give us options. And I think it's really a responsibility of us and the people in this room to be looking at that and doing that. So how do we design systems that provide options to the employers that we work for, the businesses that we work for, or the products we build ourselves? How do we leave ourselves open in this unknown future? So quick thing to follow on from what G said. If any of you have seen me talk before, you probably already know this. For those of you that haven't, apologies. I'll probably get a little bit sweary tonight. I'm from Mount Colah, just north of Hornsby, and it sort of tends to happen. If I get excited and or frustrated, I tend to swear a lot, and this stuff both excites me and frustrates me. So apologies in advance to any people that are sensitive around swearing. I'm really fucking sorry. Mobile isn't the future, because this is the first thing that I'm going to end up swearing about. If I fucking hear this one more time, I'm going to kill someone. It is not the future, it's the now. Right? And businesses and us and everyone else needs to stop talking about this stuff as though it's coming tomorrow, because it's not coming tomorrow. It's here right now. It is the now. Businesses need to stop making excuses about this stuff. But I'm preaching to the converted here. You guys all know this. So, but what mobile does offer us is a bit of a lens into the future. It gives us a bit of an idea of what is coming and what we do need to design for, and how we need to move forward with some form of intent. And that's really what I want to talk to you guys about tonight, because we're all in the driver's seat in that space. So what makes us successful on mobile? What do we do day in, day out that makes mobile so successful? So I think there's a handful of things that mobile is, and I'll run over these just very briefly and then dive into each of them in a little bit more detail. So mobile, firstly, is really personal. Secondly, mobile is omnipresent. Thirdly, it's ubiquitous. Fourth, it's generally speaking always connected. And increasingly, mobile is actually voice activated. So let's just run through these in a little bit more detail. So personal. My device, my phone, is my device. It's mine. Broadly speaking, they're not shared. We don't really share these devices. It's my device. This is actually huge in terms of if you roll back for 10 years, there was no such thing as my device. We always had to make an assumption of a shared device. We don't need to do that anymore. This is very, very important. So my device knows my habits, not mine and my wife's habits, not mine and my kids' habits, my habits, where I go every day, what I do every day. My phone's my companion, goes everywhere with me. My phone is my assistant. It helps me constantly. When I'm lost, I use maps on my phone. When I need information, I Google it on my phone. So this device is intrinsic to me and myself and this idea of self. When I go to the toilet, I have my phone with me. This is amazingly personal. Sorry, but no one else, nothing else is on the toilet with me. My wife doesn't know this much about me, you know? Thankfully. So omnipresent. It's always there. It's always present. It's on my bedside table at night. When I'm asleep, my phone is next to me or potentially under my pillow, monitoring my sleep for the night, my sleep patterns for the night, getting to know me even more personally. It's in my car. It's on my bus or my train. It's in my pocket at my wedding. I literally had my phone in my pocket at my wedding, you know. It's in all my meetings at work. You know, it is always there to document my life and or interrupt me at every moment. So it's constantly there. It's ubiquitous. Everyone in this room has a mobile phone with them, surely. Does anyone not have a phone with them? No? Yeah, it's ubiquitous, right? The only person I know that doesn't have a phone, I know two people. No, that's not true. I now know one. One person that does not have a phone, my mum. And she just flat out refuses to because that's what her son does. And in her words, fuck that, I'm not getting on board. She's very supportive. It's not an issue. All of us use a mobile phone every day. We do this constantly. All of us use the web on a phone. This really speaks also to that idea that apps are better than web and web is better than apps. And I mean, seriously, it's cut through all of that bullshit. They have different purposes. They're there for different reasons. Okay? We all use the web on our phone. We all use apps on our phone. In 2016, American adults spent on average 2 hours and 51 minutes on their mobile device per day. This idea that mobile is the future or that mobile is coming is bullshit. It's here. It's now. But these, like I say, I'm preaching to the choir. I don't need to bang on about that too much. Always connected. Yay, cloud. Yeah. So always, probably not. We've all dealt with the offline issues. Yeah. But broadly and generally speaking, we're hyper-connected. We're always connected. So information is always available. My mapping, my scheduling, you know, all of my social networks. This is hyper-connectivity going on constantly. And then finally, let's just talk about this idea of voice-activated. So this is certainly, we're seeing a rise in this, and I think this is a really interesting space because this leads more into this idea of the future. So Google Assistant, obviously, Siri, Alexa. You actually have Alexa on your phones if you've got any of the Amazon apps. Cortana is out there. But on the phone, interestingly, we've still always got this kind of backup of the screen. And I think this is a really interesting point, and this is what really leads us into how do we design for the future. Because, interestingly, the future, by my mind and from everything I can see, is really all about ambient computing. And so what is ambient computing? Well, it's somewhat unknown, but it's highly likely it's omnipresent. It's always there. It's ambient, right? It's like everything else that is ambient in our world. It's always there. It's everywhere. It's always connected. It's voice activated. And it's personal. Does this sound familiar? Does this sound not like a checklist of things we've just looked at of why mobile's awesome? Well, that's because the stuff that's coming down the road is also awesome. It's just that it may not have a screen, or if it does have a screen, it's probably used a little bit differently. So does anyone know what this movie is? Has everyone seen this movie? Her? Yeah? Spike Jonze love story about this character, Theodore, that falls in love with Samantha, played by Scarlett Johansson, and he falls in love with an AI bot of sorts. It's actually a really fantastic movie. For those of you that haven't seen it, it's actually a really, really great film. Unlike most futuristic films, it doesn't sort of fall into this trap of let's explore this dystopian future. It has elements of that. You think it's going that way, but actually there's this very interesting sort of acceptance of this idea that this man falls in love with this artificial intelligence. And then there's some really interesting pivotal and poignant moments in it. Things like he finds out that, that Samantha is talking to other people. She's cheating on him, if you like. And he says to her, are you talking to other people right now? And she's like, yeah. And he's like, how many? And she's like, right now, like 4,238. or something. She's talking like thousands. She's essentially cheating with him with thousands of people. It's a really fascinating film. But the reason that I put this slide up really is probably more about this. So in the film, he essentially has what is akin to a phone, but really his interface is voice, and his interface is these earbuds that he puts in and then he talks to her through. And he holds these conversations with her, and he seeks counsel from her, and he falls in love with her through these conversations that he has. And it's a really, really fascinating look into the future, I suppose. And we look at it and we go, that's very, very futuristic. But actually, these kinds of voice-based applications are with us today. We don't quite have the level of artificial intelligence yet to hold that conversation, but we certainly have the interfaces. Apple have certainly released their earbuds now that, Siri integrated, et cetera, you can talk to those things. But I think some of the other stuff that's going on is probably the same, if not more interesting. If you want to talk about the idea of ambient computing, then we should really be talking about these two devices. Amazon's Echo and Google Home. So great devices in terms of they're just sitting in the corner, they're just listening out for you, they're listening out for commands that you can just issue to them. But these present a variety of issues. So we at Billu have done lots of work building things for these things, even though they're not really in Australia yet, but spent a lot of time investing in this area to go, well, how hard is it to interact with a brand when there is no screen? And this presents some fundamental challenges across the board. So things like, I spoke about Stan earlier. We helped rebuild the Stan app. If I were to ask one of these things, what movies are on Stan, where does it even start? There's 15,000 things in the titles in the catalog. If I'm to ask it, if I'm to ask the domain app a similar thing, what properties are in my area? There's probably 10 or 12 properties for sale in my area at any point in time. It's not. I don't want it to sit there and rattle off every property to me one by one by one by one. This isn't a list view that I'm scrolling through. Yeah. So we get into this idea of we need to start building intelligence into our systems. Now, my question to you is, do you think that type of intelligence is useful in a mobile app today? And, of course, the obvious answer is, well, of course it is. If I can get more relevant results to you sooner, of course that's more valuable. So investing in these types of things today to drive value into a business today not only drives value to that business and its customers today, but sets it up for tomorrow, sets it up for this change in screens. Some of the other stuff that's going on, I don't know if any of you guys in the room, hopefully you people in the room saw this, Google have relaunched Google Glass. So their pivot now really is to Google Glass Enterprise, and they're focusing on the enterprise sector. And the idea that we can use augmented reality and augmented reality glasses in a professional space where we need our hands free. So, in this instance, it's a safety culture hat on. So some kind of industrial work site or something like that where I need my hands free, but I need information. I need it there. I need access to it. This is really fascinating stuff. And there's this other group as well called Realware who do a similar kind of thing. So I think the big thing here is that what we use the screen for and what we've typically designed our systems around being the screen and being the way we interact with a screen is fundamentally changing out from under us. It's either moving into something like Google Glass or Realware, or it's potentially disappearing completely. It's fundamentally shifting, and we have the chance, I suppose, to set ourselves up and set our employers and all the businesses we work with up to really leverage this change. But we need to rethink the screen. We need to start rethinking the screen because Apple released iPhone 10 years ago. Google followed not long after. It's been 10 years, and I was at a conference on Thursday where someone was up talking about, so guys, we need to stop talking about the customer and start talking about mobile because it's the future. And again, I'm going to go, mobile is not the fucking future, but we keep saying it. But we're still not ready. Businesses are still, broadly speaking, not ready. Everyone in this room is ready. The businesses they're working for are ready. But I'm telling you now, I walk into businesses every single week who are just not ready. The old monoliths are just there and they can't do anything. We can't do anything about it. There's nothing we can do. Well, we need to redesign our systems, and we need to start redesigning those systems today. And actually, my mission at the moment is to start really empowering people in, your roles to start making those changes because broadly speaking, you guys need the same stuff that all of these future technologies need. You need APIs, you need artificial intelligence, you need open access into the monoliths and the systems, right? You don't need some shitty old CMS system sitting in there that has no APIs, that no one can touch, that, some guy gatekeeper stands by going, no, you won't do, the web's the way of the future. And we're going to deliver everything with the web. Sorry, you're going to deliver that Amazon voice thing with the web. It's fascinating. I'm really interested by that. Please do tell me more. It's clear it doesn't scale. It doesn't scale into the future. So silver bullets, I want to talk about a few of them. I actually have a passionate love for React and React Native. I'm not just saying that to our first speaker. I do actually love it. We invest a lot in it at Billu as well. We spend a lot of time there. But I have a distinct and passionate hatred for all of the other ones and everything else on the list. I have a passionate disdain and hatred for silver bullets. This idea that I can ship a technology in that just solves all of our fucking problems with the user interface, and then I can just use my 2 devs and they can just build everything for me. And no, it doesn't work. It never fucking has. Come on. How many people here have worked with PhoneGap or Ionic, for example? And yeah, not many, because most of us killed ourselves, right? Like we didn't survive. No one made it. So this kind of stuff, and all of this stuff really is trying to solve a problem that, broadly speaking, is disappearing, right? We're trying to solve the user interface problem. Where all the user interfaces are going to be the same. They just make them the same. Well, they're not. They're just not going to be. It's fundamentally shifted. And the problem is, I say this to businesses all the time, the problem is you're investing in front-end tech. You're investing in client-side technology to solve sweeping problems across channels. What about when you want to create a chatbot on Facebook? In all fairness, how is React or React Native going to help you? It doesn't. It does because you had to build APIs because it's a sensible infrastructure. So you had to build APIs to service it and to leverage it. So great. But you still need to go and build that new client-side interaction on top of it. With all of these technologies, you need to do this. So I often say to businesses, stop trying to invest in, particularly we look at the PhoneGaps and the Ionics, etc. Stop trying to take your web team and just deploy them into mobile, because there's another thing coming right behind it that it just doesn't work for. Because there's this fundamental shift. And while you're making this investment decision, you're making the wrong investment decision. So when the front end needs to fundamentally shift, you need to fundamentally shift things. Now, here's the problem. This is how pretty much most CTOs I meet deal with this. Fuck, what am I going to do? This is also hard. They're literally like, fuck, I don't know. Can't you guys just fucking write it once? And, just the look of just pain on their faces, right? They just haven't admitted to themselves yet that actually, if you invest things in the right way, you can be really strong. You can be really good at this stuff. And actually, one of the reasons when G reached out to me to talk here, I was like, yeah, the Android meetup. Normally, I'd be really afraid to go there. But actually, fuck it, I'm going to go because I think you guys are in the best position of anyone to be looking at this ecosystem and looking at this stuff and saying, actually, you know what? We're better positioned than anyone else in this space. So obviously on mobile, we've got Android and native Android, and we can be rolling with that. And in VR, we've obviously got Android and native Android, and we can deploy that. And RealWare that I showed you guys before uses Android and totally native Android, and you can build shit for this today. And Google Glass is Android, and you can build shit for this today. And then Google Home isn't Android, but you've been very familiar with this ecosystem, right? And all of the contacts that you've made in and around Google are all going to be there to help you to deploy shit into this ecosystem. And I think finally for me, TensorFlow is a really interesting technology. So you mentioned my favorite Silicon Valley episode of all time, Hot Dog, Not Hot Dog. It's just, if you haven't seen that Silicon Valley episode, when you get home tonight, just go and watch that episode because it's fucking amazing. And yes, that is essentially built on TensorFlow. But the thing that I think with TensorFlow that's really fascinating is its portability. So embedded on Android, embedded on iOS, run it on the server, continue making it self-learning. It's a really fantastic and amazing piece of technology that I personally think everyone in this room should be looking at and training themselves up on and getting to understand it. On the AI front, I could babble on about this for days. Kind of three distinct areas, in AI. Don't go trying to learn AI algorithms and learn how to write AI algorithms. Just check out. Don't do that. Unless you're working at Google or you have a PhD in artificial intelligence or machine learning, just back off, because that shit's crazy. But those algorithms that are written require training, and they require application of those algorithms. They're useless on their own. So look at some of those algorithms, things like image classifiers, for example, and think about how you can use those things to create better workflows within your systems, right? So examples might be, I don't know, domain. I don't know, Callum's sitting right in front of me. So take a photo of a house, find similar houses like this. I like the look and feel of this house. This is a classic image classifier problem, right? Now, the thing is, you've got to train that image classifier. It's a shitload of work, but it's work that needs doing, right? And someone's got to do it. Well, let's get in there and do it. Let's build this stuff. And then you've got to implement it. Interestingly, the implementation bit is the simple bit. So if you've got a fully trained ML model, it's like lines of code to use that thing. It is like literally, it's lines of code. It's not difficult. So don't let this sort of shit scare you off. Get in there and have a go. Because I think all of this stuff sitting right there in front of us, it's all coming down the pipe very, very quickly, very fast. I'd be very surprised if 3 to 5 years from now, we're all sitting here having the same conversation about Android. In fact, I'm going to say there's absolutely no way. So, look, I started Billu 7 years ago with the idea that mobile was taking over the world. What I'm interested in now is mobile's not taking over the world, it's taken over the world. So what's next? Where are we going? What are we investing in? Where are we spending our time? And where do we put the brightest minds in our community to good use? And I don't think personally that it's, in fairness, supporting a React Native team. I think there are better things we can be doing with our time. So I'm going to say to you guys, the ecosystem is really rich. Go create cool shit tomorrow. Create that unknown future, right? If you don't know what it is, fucking make it. Cool. Any questions? I'm sure there's questions. 21 minutes.
Cool. Yeah, thanks for the talk. That was awesome. Yeah, AI is really cool. It's something we've been like exploring on our tech kind of hack days and stuff. What I'm quite interested in is AR, and iOS have like knocked out the park with
AR Kit is fucking awesome, by the way.
So I built something using that for our hack day. That was so cool. Do you think having like Android really don't have anything on the table just now? Like Tango's announced like 2-3 years ago, and it's not there. Do you think it's down to these big companies to keep driving forward in parity for us to be able to create these experiences?
I don't think it should be. I think, sadly, sometimes I think that it is. But I think, in all honesty, I think that's us being lazy, to be honest with you. It's not like Apple have created something that we couldn't do previously. You know, like ARKit, and for those of you that don't mind dabbling in a bit of iOS, have a look at ARKit. It is fucking awesome. It just makes making AR experiences just brutally simple and really, really an enjoyable experience to code them. But sadly, often I think it can be. We're getting the same thing in iOS as well. They release Core ML, their core machine learning thing, and all of a sudden the iOS community is like, oh my God, machine learning, it's fucking awesome. And I'm like, you've always been able to do it, but people don't seem to until it's handed to them. And so I think actually that's part of what this talks about for me. Like, this other shit is out there and you can go and do it. So don't wait for, it's like Kotlin, right? Like, we brought Kotlin on 2 years ago at Billu, or nearly 2 years ago at Billu. And there were a lot of companies we went into work with who were like, oh, I don't know about Kotlin. It's not really sanctioned yet, you know? Like, fucking really? Are we going to wait for Google to sanction this? Which obviously, thankfully, they have, and that conversation's become a lot easier. But it was so obvious that this is where we need to be going and what we need to be doing. So sometimes I think we need to be empowered to make these decisions. We often know what the right decision is.
Awesome. Thanks.
Cool.